It's the Rush Hour on Triple M.
Wrapping up the weekend of footy.
Get Purple in here and discuss footy.
This is Damo's recovery session. When you need a tool, call Coates Hire on 13 15 52.
Just as we're about to go back into frenzy mode, welcome to you, Purple.
Yeah, frenzy mode and hub mode for about 400 AFL people heading up to the southeast Queensland part of the country again tomorrow, Jim, Tuesday.
Yes, I know you are part of the big hitting group that are heading up there to just keep things on the rails. I like the fact that our man's part of that part of what makes the competition tick. Now, we do news first and then the good and the bad. So kicking off news, are we starting with Nathan Buckley?
Yeah, I reckon we should. I think he's held together the Collingwood team he coaches really impressively yet again this year. They've had so many injuries, haven't they? And typical Collingwood situations to wade through. And I thought what they did on Sunday against Carlton was as impressive as they've been this year. They've still got some good ins to come back in, and I'm looking forward to seeing DeGoey get back soon. There's still a chance now that Howe will also come back in. But Bill? They took in three big men against the Blues, and they came out on top. And I thought it was interesting, guys. And I don't know whether you've seen this in totality, Jim, but right at the end of his press conference last night after that really big win against the Blues, he basically kept the conference going to address a newspaper column that had been published on Saturday about his unsuccessful journey to a premiership in football. It's now 28 years old as that journey of player and coach. And yeah, for those who haven't heard it, you're going to hear a very proud and emotional Nathan Buckley addressing that particular issue.
Can I just say something? I know there was an article in the paper the other day. I don't want to make it all about me, but about emptiness. I just want to put on record that my life is very far from empty. Like, I don't have a flag, but I'll be working towards it. But it's not going to define me, whether I get it or not. My life is very full. I'm very fortunate. I had a lot of love and got a great club and great group of boys, and I'm looking forward to whatever the next couple of months brings.
Interesting.
What'd you make of that, Jim?
I loved it because I love him. I have always been a Nathan Buckley fan. I love how honest he is, and I think I'm 100% with you. The job he's done in the recent years with Collingwood has been superb, but the way he handles himself and the way he conducts, the narrative around his own world and his footy world, I just think it's superb. So hats off.
Yeah, exactly right. 127 wins apiece. Can you believe that? Carlton and Collingwood against each other, which is just unbelievable after Collingwood's win yesterday. Now, Damo, you've been wavering a little bit, which it's a bit unnerving because you're a very straight man. You know what you're on about. But you've been wavering about the grand final date, where it's going to be and what time it's going to be. Have you got any update, please, Damien?
You're the only running with this narrative, Bill, about me wavering. I haven't got anything to waver from. I've said that the Queensland state is the one that's favoured to get the grand final, which is still the case, and the one that I do expect to be the case, Bill. But what we did here on the weekend, and we did touch on this on the Saturday Rub and also the Sunday Footy Show, was that there has been a significant push from SA. It's a nicely put case to the AFL that certainly had them thinking. And as we speak now on this Monday, this will be thrashed out at an AFL Commission meeting on Tuesday. I believe, Bill, they will take another 24 hours beyond that day, Tuesday, to now push it into Wednesday before they fully sign off and alert all the bidding states. And look, as we know, it's WA, SA, New South Wales and Queensland. They're the ones who've pitched for it. I think we'll get an announcement Wednesday. I do still feel that it will be the goodwill component to the Queensland push that gets that state over the line.
Righto, and it will be a twilight game?
Yeah, I reckon it would be, Bill, and that could be, back into the Melbourne market at a 6 or 6:30 start. I think daylight saving will kick in into the Queensland state by that stage, so that there might be a 5:30 start for the actual bounce of the ball in that state. But yeah, that'd fit in pretty well, I reckon, Bill. And there is still, as much as they want to get the nighttime component to it, that they are still mindful of the younger audience who they don't want up and out of bed, so to speak, at 11 o'clock at night if it was a full-on night game.
All right, good news, Rap. I like that, Fat. It's what we want. Get the news out of Damo, and then we can end the news there, and we can get to
I'm not sure.
I'm just desperately trying to keep the North Melbourne Footy Club out of the news.
Oh,
right?
no,
So we can get
Jim,
out of
Jim.
that. We can get to a break, and then when
No.
we come back, what?
Oh, all right. North Melbourne, do you want to do it now, Damo, or do we put it number one negatives?
Well, the fact that Jim doesn't want us to do it, Bill, means we do it right now, I reckon, because
Well,
that
quickly.
club is that club is
Removing
going
myself
very, very
from the
poorly.
discussion somehow.
Oh, now, Jim, eight shots last night on goal to the opposition 31.
Don't ask me about it. Ask Purple. He's the newsbreaker.
Pittard and Pollock can't get a game, and they're fit. They're about the only two that are fit on the list, and they can't get a game. Pollock actually played in a scratch match for Collingwood somehow. I don't know how that happened the other day, Damo.
Yeah, and look, I just haven't liked what I've seen there all year, Bill. I don't like what they did to some class players when it came to forcing Ben Cunnington, or allowing, I should say, Ben Cunnington to play in round 5 when he could barely walk. It happened 2 weeks later with Jack Zeeble, who clearly wasn't right to go, didn't also get through even the first quarter of that game in round 7. There's issues around the structure of the club, Bill, and while we're talking about this in a news sense, we would need 3 hours to properly thrash out what is wrong with that club, and we don't have that time, but they're in a world of hurt, and while they've got 3 matches that they've won this year, which is 3 more than the Adelaide Crows, I feel that they are in the same conversation as the Crows when it comes to being the club in the biggest amount of mess.
Well, you're right, and I'm telling you, if North Melbourne played Adelaide next Saturday, say, I think Adelaide win by 40 points.
They've got big decisions to make,
40
Purple.
points.
That's what they have got. They've got to think very clearly and strategically about how they navigate their way through the next 18 months. And let's hope they do that. Now, let's get to a break because positives. We like being positive, Fat. Don't keep bringing negative stuff up. Positives coming up next with Purple.
For Coates Hire, Damien Barrett is here to talk positives from round 14.
Where are you starting, Purple?
I just want to start with Collingwood. I know we touched on the Pies a few moments ago, but the specifics of what they did against Carlton was something pretty special in the context of 2020, I feel, Jim. And the elevation of Taylor Adams, I know you love him, Bill, Tay-Tay,
Yes.
but he has now got a very clear space as an equal, hasn't he, to any one of the other members of that Collingwood midfield. And while that may have been obvious to some people at Collingwood for some time, I reckon it's only just now that the wider footy community is embracing of this notion that he is the equal when it comes to 2020 football to a Pendlebury, to a Treloar when he's fit, and also to a Sidebottom when he's playing. And he was crucial, Bill, wasn't he, with what happened against the Blues? He's been crucial all year. He stood up, he's tough, he's durable, and he gets results. And he's a far better skilled player, I think, than people initially thought he may have been.
And you know what he'll be, Damo? He'll be the next captain of Collingwood, I reckon.
It seems that way, doesn't it? They talk about him so highly in that space, and the way he's been able to assist Pendlebury in that leadership role through this tough period. No, I think they're through it now. I really do, guys. I think they've weathered that storm where there was a 3 to 4 week process, wasn't there, where they just seemed unsure of themselves. But I reckon they've got through it. They took a punt, didn't they, Jim, when they named the 3 big men in that team. Cox came back in alongside Grundy, and they also left Darcy Cameron in there. Now, I don't expect those 3 big men to be playing for every game for the remainder of the year, but clearly it worked against the Blues, and it's an option now that Nathan Buckley can use if he needs to, and if he sees fit, maybe against a West Coast, for instance.
Game and percentage out of the 4, that'll be the aim for Collingwood. If they can get their way up into there, then obviously they're really in business. So if I can stay with the positives, not sure this man will necessarily be the captain of his club, but he might well already be their best player. Christian Petrarca Saturday night, Purple, was unbelievable.
Wasn't he? Yeah, kicked 4 of the Demons' 8 goals, and that was probably a part of his game, wasn't it? That hadn't been at the high end as good as this season has been. But yeah, to manage that impact on the scoreboard in a game that was won by less than a kick, and to kick the winning goal too, the way he did it in controversial circumstances, given the lack of a camera on the goal line. But I didn't have an issue with that decision. By the way, I thought it would look like a goal from what was the way it was called. And you're right, and the workings of the guys down back it was the most complete game that Stephen May had played for Melbourne, clearly. And I thought Lever too, Bill, just the way he was able to do what he does when he was absolutely flying back in 2017 at the Crows as an intercept marker, and he's got now a good connection, hasn't he, with May down in the back line. I think it's a really good sign as to what happened in that game against the Saints on the weekend.
Spot on, Damo. And Stephen May, old Frothies, he has been outstanding this year. He's been really good. And Petrarca, the big improvement in him is he actually now kicks goals. He used to miss a lot of those goals. He kicks goals now. So that was a good win. I just want my favourite Joe Danaher. Just to see him playing footy, that big smile, kicking goals. When he's up, what's going to happen with him, Damo?
Yeah, I don't see him playing tomorrow, Bill, for what it's worth. I think it's
second up.
Yeah, I just think it's too close. And we all had our hearts in our mouths, didn't we, watching him play last week for the first time in a lot more than a year. So I'd be surprised if they tried to bring him in second up after 5 days. I think you're asking about the big picture, Bill. Yeah. I still see him going down the path he went down last year to explore options outside of Victoria. There's nothing that anyone in the football landscape is saying to me that suggests that he won't again go down that path. So I think it's the circus that went on in the trade period last year will be the circus again when it comes to that. But he was great, wasn't he? Someone who probably didn't get the headlines that he would have otherwise got had it not been for Danaher was Andrew McGrath's third quarter in that game on the weekend. And he's put together a pretty good year under all those circumstances. And again, I really like the way he's going about it. I reckon if we stick with the positives, I think your boys have to be given yet again another mention in this space, don't they? The way they retrieved a 37-point deficit against the Western Bulldogs. And your man, Gary Rowan, Bill, I know you've been loyal to him, like when others may have dropped off, but he took a while to get going. He took more than a quarter and a half to get going. Jim's not as big a fan of Gary Rowan as you are, but I think you're starting to win that battle.
What you can't see is the pressure he puts on the defensive players when they're running out, and they know he's around. He runs a few down, he misses a few, but some of those pressure acts he does, he can mark, he kicks goals, and he's not going to be a 15, 20 possession player. He'll get 10 or 12, but as long as he makes... I just want to ask you boys, the best player in the comp at the minute is Lachie Neale, they say. Patrick Dangerfield's not far behind. His game the other night was just outstanding. Would you have him or Dusty, boys? Here's one just over the drip tray at the bar. Dusty or Danger?
I'd still take Dusty if it came to that, Bill, and I'd take it from the goal-kicking component Dusty brings. But again, if you ended up with Paddy, you're not going to be upset, are you?
No, Fife, I'm taking.
Well, he wasn't in it, Jim.
Yeah, he's the best player in the comp for me. There's some big games coming up this round, by the way. I know we got the negatives coming up, Purple, and we're going to focus hard on them. But this round has enormous interest. Essendon have to beat the West Coast Eagles, otherwise they're nearly cooked. So that is enormous. And then you go forward to the Giants and Carlton for a spot in the 8. And if whoever loses, that's going to find it very tough, especially the Blues. Then you go to Collingwood and Brisbane for a spot in the top 4. 3 cracking games coming up, Purple, for me.
Yeah, and the Giants got themselves going again, didn't they, in recent weeks? Yep. And they're playing with a flair that they once did when they got the Orange Tsunami going all those years ago, but hasn't been seen a lot since. But I could see them squeezing into the finals pretty much as they did last year, and again potentially getting on that roll now that they seem to have got over the hump.
I'll tell you,
that they were going through.
As we go to a break, because we got the negatives coming up, imagine if you're a player, let's say for the Kangaroos, you're going through the season from hell. You see, round 15, you got to buy, and yet you're playing in 6 days.
JB and Bill, this is Triple M's Rush Hour, and for Coates Hire, Damien Barrett is joining us.
Negative time, Purple. Where do we start?
We'll start with Billy Brownless, Jim, on this one because, look, as you know in this media trade, you have to give someone your word, don't you? It's the most important thing we've all got, whether you're a journalist itself or just a presenter, a commentator, a broadcaster. We had this situation yesterday. Stephen May was good enough to jump on the Skype line after returning to southeast Queensland after a big trip, big win interstate. So in the little ad break before he comes on, he's having a little banter with all of us, and particularly Bill, who he seems to get on really well with. And Bill called him frothies for a little incident he might have had last year.
Years ago, yep.
I heard it. Everyone heard it. Bill actually said to Stephen, it's okay, mate, I won't call you that on air. And Stephen said, thank you, mate. That's really appreciative. I don't mind you having a go at me about it, but it'd be good if you kept it off air. 2 minutes later, we're back on air. Bill's introduced him. G'day, frothies.
Oh, no. He's a disgrace, Purple. And I'll give you another example of it, and we will be playing this later in the week. But Zach Butters, of course, in one of the funniest things any of us have ever seen, just fell over no one inside the Ford 50 Adelaide Oval, and we'll be playing Bristol's call of it, which was hilarious. Anyway, Zach Butters comes on afterwards, and we all thought, right, how do we delicately handle this, Purple? So we thought maybe right at the end of an interview about how well Port Adelaide played and how well he played and all the rest, we might just touch on it and see if he's up for hearing the audio. So I get him on. Big win for Port Adelaide. Zach Butter's good enough to join us, and I get halfway through that, and I hear idiot fat come to the. Ask him, Jim. Ask him. No, you got to ask him. Hadn't even finished the introduction to him. That's the sort of nick our man's in.
Yeah. I say this as a compliment. Only you and only you can get away with such behaviour. People still love you.
Actually, no, Stephen May's a really good fella, and he had one frothy that time. Some idiot. One. Some idiot took a photo of him and was blowing up. What about the Melbourne Footy Club? What about the Melbourne Footy Club, Damo? This is a negative. They had to go Gold Coast, Alice Springs, straight back on the plane, back to Alice Springs, and now they're going to Cairns for a game Wednesday.
Yeah.
What? Yeah,
straight back on the plane to Alice Springs. They were in Alice Springs. They got on the plane
at Alice Springs. They went back to the Gold Coast.
And then up to Cairns. So it's a tough trip is what you're trying to say for the Melbourne Football Club. That's what you're meaning, Bill.
It's a tough trip, Damien.
It is a tough trip, Bill, and they cope with it on the weekend just gone, and they'll be hoping to do the same again this week, which probably gets us to the other side of the equation. I know you don't like being negative, but we need to if we're to cover this game properly. And Carlton goes into that bracket. They lost an opportunity, didn't they, with how they played poorly in the second half against Collingwood to leave themselves with a 6-7 scoreline and really, I think, lose momentum enough to make the finals. And I think it's going to be a disappointing outcome if they don't get there. They've talked themselves up. Yes, they've had some injuries to key players, but so too have a lot of other footy clubs who are also vying for those spots in the 8. And I felt yesterday they were exposed as a pretender when it came to that bottom reaches of the 8.
Yeah, it was disappointing. They put themselves at halftime in a position to really make a statement, I reckon, Purple. And then to not score a goal, I think they didn't score a goal in the second half.
Four behind.
Yeah, that's very disappointing.
They've got a game up their sleeve compared with some teams in that mix. They've only played the 13, but not looking good. But the Bulldogs too, again, and going. Let's couch it this way so it's accurate. Going into round 14, they had not beaten any of the teams inside the 8. Now that's changed now with a live ladder component to it, but that's now proof to me that they aren't going to be able to figure significantly. They might still squeeze in, but they with now a 7-7 scoreline, have left themselves with a lot of work to do. And ultimately, they can beat the teams right around them and certainly below them. But when it comes to the high-end quality, they just don't have the tricks to do so. And I think we can make that judgment after 14 matches now.
They have got the Hawks and the Dockers to finish. They got the Eagles in their next match, which will be tough. But they have got a nice soft finish, so they might just be able to make something of it, Purple. But even if they do beat those two clubs, that question will still be there come finals.
It will be, yeah. And the way it's shaping, 9 wins gets you into the conversation. 9.5, I think, would guarantee you a spot in the 8, and 10 clearly would. So, yeah, 2 of those 3 wins is as an absolute minimum in order to be in that conversation. The Saints too, in a similar way, but I think a better way for want of a comparison, have also made themselves have to work hard now. So they're 8 and 6. They've lost 4 matches now, 2 in a row by less than a kick. So rounds 1, 6, 13 and 14 of those matches in question. And I think when you've now got 4 matches you've lost by that small margin, it's something that they're going to have to carry and maybe have to actually blame themselves for if they don't get into 8th position come end of round 18.
Well, we talked a lot about the kicking into Jeremy McGovern a couple of weeks ago, Purple. The same's got to be said for Stephen May. He had an unbelievably good game Saturday night. But seriously, the way St Kilda decided to bring the ball inside forward 50 just played into his hands. Eventually, you got to say, right, this ain't working. We got to go a different way, but they didn't.
No, they didn't, and that was to Melbourne's credit, and May's credit, wasn't it, the way he was able to read it alongside Lever on that occasion. But they to me haven't done much wrong apart from lose those games by small margins. But I can only imagine the weight that now is inside their heads of particularly Brett Ratton, who's done a lot of things right, but ultimately has lost those games. They lost 6 games, but as I said, 4 of them. And one of them was to North Melbourne way back in round 1, which will be even harder to swallow right now, given how badly they've gone. West Coast was disappointing too, just to throw in a different style of negative. Lost to Richmond back at the start of round 14. And I raised them because they got out of Perth again for the first time in 7 weeks, and they lost, which is what they were doing at the start of the year when they first went to the Southeast Queensland hub. So I just feel that they're off the pace unless they're playing at Optus Stadium. And when it comes to a season where everything needs to go right, I think there's now enough evidence that they're just not the team that they are at Optus Stadium when they're not there.
Essendon Dogs, Saints, their next 3 weeks. So we'll find out plenty about the West Coast Eagles, those games on the road, of course. And then they got North to finish. They're trying to lobby the AFL to get that back at Optus Stadium for obvious reasons. All right, buses, purple, before we head off.
Yeah, well, that one at Arden Street, Jim, when they do eventually get back from Southeast Queensland, we might have to send a second one down there. We've already got that one at Adelaide as well, and that one at Hawthorn's still sitting there as well for when they return. But the North Melbourne buses, Jim, we might have to upgrade it and either get a really, really big one or just send a couple of little
I'll
ones.
tell you why you're not sending another one there, because you've got to send one to the Cremorne. Because Fat twice made a disgrace of himself on the weekend, so you have also had a bus sent to your joint. And don't worry, that you can drive around in that because you can't fit into a normal car.
Well, guess what, Jim? I'm going to get an Esky, fill it up with Carlton Dry, and just drive around Geelong. I'll get a driver, but I'll just go for a little drive because I can go
Can
more
we get
than
that
5K.
bus through the police checkpoint on the Geelong freeway there, Jim?
No, you can't. And don't try and be in the right lane either, because Fat clogs that up as well. Purple, great chatting to you. Well, next time we speak, you'll be in Hubland.
I will be. So
Hubs McGee.
I'll be locked in. Hubs McGee.
Thanks, Purple. Good chatting to you. We look forward to speaking to you very shortly.
Damo's recovery session. When you need a tool, call Coates Hire on 13